Hey, what's up, everybody? Good morning, and we are back again. It's Thursday Morning Live, and I am super stoked and excited about this morning's show. I think we're going to bring a little bit of twist to what we normally talk about and just give you, maybe a different perspective on how you're thinking about things in your life and how you're thinking about maybe how to move forward. We're sitting in some times where the markets are might be uncertain. There's a lot of craziness in the media talking about things that are going to happen or possibly could happen. And you know, hey, let me just talk about fear for a minute, right? They say fear is false evidence appearing real, right? It's a great acronym for fear. We all sit stuck sometimes in places of fear and not take action or move forward because we hear all of this excess noise or outside noise around us that talks about, you know, the markets are bad or the world's going to come to an end or we're going to go to war. So, what if that happens? What can you do about it? All you can do about that is do something positive for yourself today. Hey, I want to welcome you here. If you're here for the first time to Thursday Morning Live, thanks for joining us this morning. We're here every Thursday morning bringing a different guest talking about entrepreneurship, basically. Yeah, we talk a lot about real estate and passive investing, but we're talking about entrepreneurship and how to walk through maybe struggles in your life or the journey in your life. And my guest this morning is going to help us take a look at some of that. My guest this morning is Carlos Vasquez from Los Angeles, California. Carlos has got a little bit of history and a background that you might find amazing. Here's what I want to invite you. If you have a comment, if you have a question, throw that in the chat this morning. We'll get those answered for you along the way. If you want to connect, Carlos's information will be in the show notes and scrolling at the bottom. So I welcome you here. And as I always ask, you know what? Like us, love us on Instagram and Facebook and wherever you're following us on social media this morning. Subscribe to that channel because we're always bringing great content for you to help bring value to your life. So let me bring Carlos in real quick. Hey, good morning, buddy.
Hey, good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good. It's nice to meet you. I was reading your bio this morning and kind of charged me up. We have a
Yeah.
lot of the same history, and it'll kind of be interesting to talk through some of that a little bit. So,
Yeah.
um, hey, so before I get started, I always ask my guests one question, and I swear one of these days I'm going to write a book on this. But in one word, what best describes you personally and professionally?
Personally, I would say inspirational. And professionally, I would say uh, leader.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not what I thought you would have said this morning after reading your bio,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool. But leader. So, hey, do you think you've always been a leader? Or?
Yeah. I think I've always been a leader since I used to play baseball when I was a kid. I just always had this natural tendency to kind of like step up and lead situations. And when I tell you, take you through my life more, you'll see that different parts of my life, I was always in that position. So I think that's kind of how I've adopted that, and I've learned that I am a leader, so I need to now hold myself accountable to that.
Nice. Good for
Mhm.
you. Um, yeah, I think leadership is one of those things that we, maybe we have it at a young age. Maybe you
Mhm.
were the coach that picked baseball teams growing up, right before Little League started, and
Yeah.
um, or whatever you. I think you grow into it, though. Hey,
Yeah.
you know what? This is just kind of a off cuff question, but do you have, if you had to pick somebody as a favorite leader, do you have someone?
Good question. Um, you know, I think that there's many great leaders, but um, just thinking off the top of my head, uh, I don't know. I think the greatest leaders that I've ever met are people that most people don't even know. One of my best friends, his name was Chris, and I remember he was He was about 19, I was 16, and he was one of the greatest leaders I've ever met in the way that he was able to influence people without really trying and just through his actions. Um, and I haven't really seen anything like that since. Fortunately, he doesn't live. He's not living anymore. But his name was Chris, and I think he was one of the greatest leaders. And he actually taught me how to be a leader as well after meeting him.
That's really another key word you said is influence.
Yeah.
I think that rolls into great leadership very
Hmm.
strongly. Well, why
Yeah.
don't we do this? Let's jump into you and your background, your history, and what you're currently doing. Why don't you take a couple minutes and bring us up to speed?
Yeah. So it's I it's a lot. Whenever I get asked the question, I always think back to my life and feel like I've lived two lives. So when I was 13 years old, I ran away from home. I was homeless. I lived in the streets. Got addicted to drugs. Became a gang member, and I started to get involved in crime. And by the time I was 18 years old, I was on the run for armed robbery, bank robbery, and the U.S. Marshals tracked me down and got me. I was 18 years old, facing life in prison for robbery. And I remember one day I was in court, and the district attorney offered me a deal for 20 years. And he gave me 5 minutes to make the decision. And it's the biggest decision I ever made in my life. But once I realized that I didn't have much family, I didn't have anybody in court with me, became an easy decision to make because um, I had nothing to lose. And that, in my mindset back then, that's how I used to think. And so I went into prison with 20 years by the time I was 19. In my first decade, I was getting worse than the person that went in just from
Mm.
the environment. The environment controls so much of who we become. And so I got deeper and deeper into that life. And about 10 years in, I became a shot caller in prison, like going back to leadership. Became leader in prison, and that ended up sending me to solitary confinement for 3 years, where I spent 3 years, and I transformed my life in those 3 years. I had an encounter with a chaplain who introduced me to the Bible, and he told me to not give up. He believed in me, and he said I had a purpose, and I believed him because I had nothing else to believe. So I kept going, and it got me through some tough days. And I ended up reading 150 books in 3 years, and it
Mm.
transformed my way of thinking. I got out solitary, and I confronted the people who were in the prison and told them I was no longer a part of the lifestyle that I was before. And I got stabbed 2 times for that, but that was my way out. And it felt good to know that that was it, as painful as it was. And then for the next 4 years, I just started coaching in prison and helping lifers transform their lives. And then I got out, and I knew I had something. I walked out with $200 in my pocket. I didn't know how to use social media technology, anything. When I went in, they had flip phones, but I approached everything. Yeah, I approached everything with a growth mindset, and I was like, "There's not." It's just all about how you approach things, and I approached everything like I can accomplish it. So I uh, I I couldn't get a job. I finally was able to get something part time through a nonprofit, and in the meantime, I was going to college, and I learned how to start a business, and built the business while I was going through college, and now I'm the founder and CEO of How to Battle, and it's successful, and speaking, and I'm an author, and I'm doing all these things that I envisioned, um, and just trying to help others transform their lives now. And so that leads to where I'm at today. And I've been out about 2.5 years. I served 17 years out of the 20.
Mm. Um, just you said a couple of things that I kind of want to go back and unpack a little bit. First of all, though, would you explain to people what a shot collar is? The first time I heard that, I was like, "What the fuck is that?"
Yeah. Well, a shot caller is a person who is in control of other people's lives, meaning you can have somebody killed, you can have somebody removed, you could, coordinate where people are. It's just a person that's in charge and leading other people. And mostly every gang within prison has one that does that. And then those shot callers speak amongst each other to try to keep the peace and organize things and make and deal with issues. And it's all politics and stuff. And so that's what a shot caller is. And you get to that position pretty much. You're almost put into it because you get to a position where if you don't step up and do it, chaos ensues, and then it's like now you're falling. You're going to be a victim of that as well. So for me,
Right.
always never being the biggest, meanest looking dude and all that, like you envision how some dudes in prison are, which they are. It was never me like being the strongest, but it was always mentally being the sharpest. And I think that I just that's what put me in that position is I was always able to think really thoroughly and play chess, so to speak, in that life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't, on my platforms, I don't talk about a lot about my history. If I'm on somebody else's show or I speak on a stage, I talk about my history. And I know this is the first time you and I have really met. So I don't know if you know, but, I got sentenced to 10 years for wire fraud
Mhm.
and mail fraud charges back in 2013. And I've only been home for about 4 years now. I served, about 7 years, 10 months. But life changing, right? Life defining.
Mhm.
And I always find it interesting when somebody makes major life changes like you've done. I think that's just awesome. Um, I think people are faced with defining moments in their life. We get these choices, and it sounds like to me that in solitary got had this defining moment that happened. And what went through your mind at that point when you decided, hey, I don't want to live this life anymore, I want to do something different?
Yeah, it was. I was in solitary, and one of the reasons why um, that I was going to, well, I had planned to end my life, so I had wrote a letter to my mother, put it in my property because I knew they would, when they found me dead, they would give her my property, and I planned everything out, and I just didn't want to live anymore because when I was in solitary, everything that I had done up to that point had just came to my mind, and it just like was oh so overwhelming that I didn't want to live anymore. So the chaplain coming into my life and being the first man in a long time to challenge me to something and believe in me, I kind of borrowed that belief from him, and just knowing all the things that I did, and it drove me every day to want to do better and to figure out how I got to that point because I didn't grow up in a bad neighborhood and wasn't destined to fail. Like I grew up in a really good neighborhood with both my parents. They both were in the medical field. I played baseball. I went to Catholic school. Everything was good, and everything changed in one act, which was my father leaving, and my mother going into a depression because of it, and then me running away. So that was the ripple effect of my father's actions. And so when I looked at my life and saw
Hmm.
and really just envisioned the ripple effect of all the things I did to hurt people, it just became too overwhelming. So that was like that aha moment where like now I need to shift that and I need to do the opposite of that and create a ripple effect that's going to help people. And so that got me through those 3 years. And in the process of just having this thirst for learning and understanding and wanting to find purpose, I transformed my way of thinking, and then everything else came from there.
Hey, you've said it 3 or 4 times now, but uh, ripple effect. I think that there is so much of a ripple effect in all of our actions, in the things we do, whether they're positive or negative,
Mhm.
because we affect so many people around us. I had a guy tell me a long time ago when I started in the real estate business. He said, every time you pick up the telephone and make a cold call and you get to a sale as a result of that cold call, think about all the people along the way that you kept employed or affected because of that. And
Mhm.
and that really amplifies that ripple effect thing. Um, uh, I just want to say good morning to Bella, who's listening in and said an amazing testimony, Carlos.
Mhm.
Appreciate that you have the ability to move people like that. So what is How to Battle? What's your company's How to Battle? What is that? What do you do?
Yeah. So when I got out of prison, I had to learn everything, and I remember I used to go on YouTube and how to everything, and just start searching and figuring things out. And so I remember when I started my company, I wanted to create a platform where people could go to figure out how to battle the things that they want to overcome, and whether that's addiction, whether that's confidence issues, whatever adversity they're facing. So I wanted to become that type of platform for people to go to. So um, I started in schools, and I remember going to schools doing just speaking to the youth, high school kids, and really made an impact on them through that. And so they asked me to come back and formulate a program for young men in underserved communities in high schools. And I started to do a program called the Men's Success Alliance, and it was so successful that. And these were boys that had been in and out of juvenile hall, boys that had been on drugs. Some brought guns to school. It was all kind of just troubled youth. And then the change started to happen, and it was so impactful that the principal and the other people at the school used to sit in on my sessions, and then they connected me with the college, Loyola Marymount, where I went and started to teach classes to psychology department on human behavior, because I had already got my degree in psychology up to that point. So it was kind of like I was the case study of people who are trying to like figure out how to like help people who go through what I went through. And so I started doing that and speaking and building my program out. And so now How to Battle has evolved into a combination of youth coaching and corporate consulting. And we have created a bridge between the two. So we train young people with the skills and the things they need to go into the work life and become successful. And companies benefit because they're the ones employing them. They're the ones hiring them. So um, the better they are, the youth going into these companies as workers, the better the company thrives. And so it's a challenge for companies with young people these days. A lot of them, they say they're hard to work with. A lot of them say that they're not loyal. They jump from job to job, but it's because they don't have the training coming fresh out of high school or college to know how to deal with the work environment. So that's what we do now. And it's crazy how much it's evolved, and it's been good. So
Yeah, good for you.
yeah.
Any um any regrets um from the time you spent or being away or
Um, no regrets. I think I'm extremely grateful for my journey. I think that it gave me, the main reason why is because of my level of gratitude. I don't think I would be as grateful as I am today had I not been through what I've been through. I wouldn't have the perspective that I have today for things that people take for granted and don't even realize. Like, and just knowing that, um, it it makes me feel like a certain way each day, and that feeling then transitions into my work and everything else I do. So I don't have any regret, and I think that I don't really question my life either, because I know that it's all for a purpose, it's all for a reason, and I know that I can never make up for all the people that I hurt, but I'll spend the rest of my life helping to impact and transform lives. So although I can never, it'll never even out. I'll always, that gives me something to strive for every day, no matter what. And I think that that's part of what my purpose is. So no regrets, but I think if I had an opportunity to go back, I wouldn't want to experience it again. But I definitely don't regret it, and I definitely appreciate it.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, this thing happens in your life, this event where you get ripped from a life that and put into this other life, and I always tell people, I say, hey, I was, never flew private, didn't have a big house, didn't have a fancy car or a boat. I was a neighborhood baseball coach and got ripped from that to live in a 12 by 12 room with three men I didn't know, nor did I like,
Hmm.
wondering what the hell happened to my life.
Right.
And, and people say, do you regret it? And that's why I asked the question, because I think it's interesting because I really don't.
Mhm.
I learned so much, I grew so much, and thinking back of who I was before that, and I have to imagine this is the same for you. But thinking back of who I was before that versus who I am today, it,
Yeah,
like two different people.
absolutely. Yeah, that's how I feel. Same thing, just a completely different person today, which is why I know that people can change and transform their life and be completely different and have the life that they want. I know it's possible, and so knowing that it like it makes me even more passionate about the stuff that I do.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So, what do you want people to walk away with this morning?
Um, I would say one of the things that when I speak at like corporate events, one of the things that I try to get people to walk away from there, and I think it's the same here, is like that you know that people have the capacity for change, and that people shouldn't be
Mm,
remembered for their worst act. And then I think that giving people a second chance is important. I'm a firm believer in redemption, and I think that if people can like look at a person like me who caused so much destruction in this world at first, who was so lost, who did so many bad things, but can like change and now go and live life in a positive way and be able to impact those who um, may not be able to be impacted so easily because the people that are speaking to them haven't been through that life experience. I think that to look at it like that, people can change, and people deserve second chances, and that also just to be more grateful for what we have,
mm.
for like the little things that people normally take for granted. So I would say those things are important, because if you take that out into the world, that gratitude and that way of thinking that people can be redeemed, and you, who knows, maybe you run into a friend of mine who just got out and needs a job and is a good man and has changed, and maybe that's the difference between you hiring him or not, is just remembering um, my journey and knowing that it's possible. So
Nice. Hey, Carlos, Bella is asking a question. She says, "Do you have a program for those that have been incarcerated, teaching them what you've learned, so that they too can go and speak and teach as you've done?"
yeah, I actually do have. I created a program that I send inside to the prisons, to those that are getting ready to get out, and
Mm,
it's a mindset transformation program. And so it's through correspondence, and so there's a lot of self reflection. So that's the in prison program. I also go into the prisons to do training and workshops and speak and stuff, and send my book in there as well. But in terms of like people that have just gotten out, yeah, I definitely work with people that get out, and I help them, and I coach them, and I guide them on their path, and I connect them with people and resources. So never forgetting, that part of my life, and always knowing that like those guys in there and girls need that hope, and that, and from somebody who's been there and done that. So yeah, I do. And if anybody's interested in more work or things that I do, or finding out more, just you could always find me on my website.
yeah. You have a book, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. I have a book. I wrote
You
the
want to
book.
talk about that a little?
Yeah, the book is The Price. The Price is an acronym for the 5 principles that help transform my life. Um, and the first one is purpose. The second one is routine. And the third one is inspiration. The fourth is confidence, and the fifth is education. And how each one of those, when I implemented those into my life, and I understood those, and I focused on those, I was able to change my life, and then helping other lifers do the same thing, and then getting out and using those same that same method to help the youth. And so
Hmm.
each one is its own principle, but each one is built upon, and so that's in the book. And it talks about how that was the thing that helped me to overcome the trauma um, that I had went through, all the things that I had experienced, the traumatic events in and out of prison. How like once I like really just focused in on those principles and embodied them, like all of the symptoms of trauma just disappeared. Like I don't have nightmares anymore. I don't have PTSD. and I've seen people get murdered in front of me many times, which is where that came from. But I don't have that anymore. I don't like it's so crazy how like just something, it's not a pill, it's not a anything like that, it's just a mindset, and once you get there you're able to overcome um, heavy challenges in life. So the book talks about that, the how that helped me overcome the trauma and stuff.
Well, I really appreciate you being here this morning. You what a way to start the morning. Normally is big twist from what I normally talk about on Thursday morning, and um, but I think resilience and is a big deal. You know, um, you talked about second chance. And so often I think it's you got to give yourself a second chance too. Because hey, how many guys do you know that you were locked up with that are home that have crawled under a rock and they can't figure it out, you know, or came home and you know, um, killed themselves, right? Because they just couldn't face it. But I think that coming home, you got to give yourself a second chance. And if people see you doing that and see you being transparent and progressing, they're going to give you a second chance. And I love that you brought that up this morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, any events coming up or anything that you're doing that you want people to know about?
So next week I'm speaking at an organization called Impact. It's an amazing place. It's in Pasadena, in California, and it's like a huge compound where people go voluntarily to overcome their addictions, and they live there. They have their own, like, it's like their own city, and like they just, men and women, and they get a room, they get clothes, they get support, they help overcome their addiction. People just show up there, they go through the courts, they come fresh out of prison. So I always it's my second time speaking there, so I'm going to speak there um, to a new group of men and women who just entered the program, and talk about my life, my addictions, and my adversity, and my the principles. Share them with them and introduce those to them. So I'll be doing that, and then just speaking different places. So I was speaking, like, I'm looking forward to speaking at Coca-Cola in Florida, and just a lot of companies are implementing second chance initiatives. So that gives me an opportunity to go speak and kind of like introduce myself to people who may have certain views on people getting out of prison or getting out of jail or system impacted. So I'm big on that, is like kind of help people shift their perspective on that, and knowing that, like, hey, these are hard workers that want to do right and make things and have a second chance like I did. And so
Yeah.
that, and working on my second book. It should be done shortly. It's a book that I wrote for men. I feel like a lot of men these days feel like they can't be men, and that they're under attack, and that there's all kind of things that they can't do that men should be able to do. So I wanted to write a book identifying the qualities of a man, and talk about my journey and how I was introduced to that, because I was raised by men. Like, I went in when I was 18, got out, in my 30s, and so I became a man in prison. But some of the things I learned in prison, when in terms of what it means to be a man, I bring out here, and I do the same thing out here, And so I wanted to, and I know that it works. So I wanted to share what that is in this book. And so those are things I'm working on. I mean, just besides building the business, and trying to, also be a good family man too.
Nice. Good for you. Hey, I really appreciate you being here this morning. Why don't you tell people how they can reach you if they're interested in connecting, or maybe have an opportunity for you to speak at an event they have going on?
Yeah. Howtobattle.com is my website. And it's up and running right now, but we're redoing it. So if it looks different in a few weeks from when you look on it now, it's because we're redoing it. But my website's howtobattle.com. I'm on Instagram at howtobattle, LinkedIn, which my name, Carlos Vasquez. I'm on LinkedIn, and Yeah, so you can find me in all those areas, and then there's links. So there's like a link tree on each one that'll link to other stuff that I'm doing, like YouTube and my book and my youth coaching program and all these other things. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And I just want to say to everybody this morning, um, you may want to pass this morning's episode on to somebody else. Maybe there's somebody in your life that has something going on that they need, maybe some encouragement or to know that they can go on with life. And so this episode obviously will give somebody some type of encouragement. So I would just ask you to pass this on to somebody else and reach out to Carlos if he can answer any questions. We're here every Thursday morning. Carlos, I appreciate you being here, and look forward to staying in touch with you along